Earth had enjoyed years of peace and prosperity. Technological revolutions had brought humanity together, and international conflicts had been replaced by unity. However, these peaceful years had dulled humanity's defensive instincts, leaving them unprepared for potential threats. This complacency was about to end. One night, an anomaly detected by international satellite systems triggered alarms in security units across the globe. At first, it was thought to be a system malfunction. A group of scientists was investigating the fluctuations in satellite signals, trying to find a natural cause. However, it soon became clear that the source of the signal was far from natural. It originated from a distant star system and pointed to a massive fleet of ships slowly entering Earth's orbit. This incoming threat was unlike any enemy humanity had ever encountered. The goal of these unknown invaders was to conquer Earth and assimilate it into their empire. Diplomacy quickly proved futile. General Alaric Stone, the head of Earth's United Defense Forces, was a cold and calculating leader with a hardened demeanor. Throughout his long military career, he had achieved countless victories and overcome numerous challenges. Now, he faced an enemy he could not define, and he knew that the threat before them was greater than anything they had ever encountered. Preparations for war began immediately. The best soldiers, engineers, and scientists from every nation were assembled. Earth's orbital defense systems were activated. Drones, autonomous defense towers, laser cannons, and plasma weapons were equipped with the latest technology. Every element of Earth's military forces was ready for battle. On a dazzling midnight, the enemy ships approached the edge of the atmosphere. Over the Pacific Ocean, the skies suddenly darkened as enormous, futuristic ships appeared. These ships were unlike anything seen on Earth. They drifted silently like dark clouds, moving forward with an invisible force. Alaric took a deep breath and turned to his strategists, giving a firm order: hit them all. We won't let a single one through. The first attack focused on the enemy's central ship. Earth's largest aircraft carriers and fighter jets launched a lightning-fast assault on the invaders. Missiles, laser beams, and high-tech weapons filled the sky with fire. Explosions lit up the night as the Pacific waters raged beneath the fury of the battle. Human forces struck the enemy ships with precision, but the impact was not as effective as anticipated. The invaders' ships were protected by a powerful energy shield. Lasers and missiles disintegrated upon impact, leaving only a brief flash of light in the sky. Alaric watched this unfold on the monitors, his brow furrowed. This technology is far more advanced than ours, he thought, though he never lost his composure. Lennox, move in, he said to one of his officers. Captain Lennox was one of Alaric's most trusted soldiers. Lennox and his small team were tasked with secretly infiltrating the enemy ship. Their mission was to disable the shield from the inside, which could change the course of the battle. Lennox, with his team, quickly boarded an assault craft and descended into the depths of the Pacific. They would approach the enemy ship from beneath the water. His eyes were filled with determination, his face set in a resolute expression. Meanwhile, the enemy ships began advancing toward Earth's major cities. As Earth's air forces launched counterattacks, Alaric and his strategists worked tirelessly. After each wave of assault, they tried more sophisticated tactics, searching for any weak point. However, the enemy's shields thwarted them at every turn. Lennox's craft sped through the Pacific waters. Ahead, the massive enemy ship hovered just above the ocean, immense and imposing. As they surfaced quietly, Lennox and his team held their breath. Silence, Lennox whispered. They placed magnetic explosives on the underside of the ship, and the shields trembled slightly. At that moment, Lennox gave the command, detonate. The explosions tore a huge gash in the lower part of the ship. The enemy's shields weakened abruptly. Alaric didn't miss the opportunity. All forces, attack now, he shouted. Earth's forces had been waiting for this moment. Hundreds of warships and jets surged forward at once. With the shields down, the enemy ship's defenses crumbled rapidly, and one by one, the invader ships were obliterated by massive explosions. The sky over the Pacific became a fiery hell. Humanity had won its first major victory, but the war was just beginning. As enemy ships sank one by one into the waters of the Pacific, people around the world began hearing hopeful news. Humanity had repelled this unknown threat. But General Alaric Stone and his team knew that this victory was only temporary. They suspected the enemy force was merely a scouting party. The real invasion had yet to come. Alaric was in the command center, planning the next steps with his strategy experts. One screen displayed analyses of the enemy ships, while another reviewed the status of Earth's defense systems. The colossal wreckage over the Pacific was being cleared, and preparations were already underway for the next wave of attacks. At that moment, General Marcus Ward, a man Alaric had worked with for years, entered the room. Marcus was a strong, imposing figure with a stern demeanor, but Alaric had always sensed a hint of uncertainty in his decisions. Today, however, there was a deeper gloom in his expression. "Alaric, we can't just sit here and wait. We need to act." "These were only the vanguard forces. The real threat is coming next," Marcus said, his voice determined yet tense. Alaric met Marcus's gaze and detected the doubt behind his words. "What are you suggesting, Marcus? Should we send more ships and go after them? We have no actionable intel." "We can't charge blindly into the dark," Alaric replied, his tone calm but firm. Marcus took a deep breath. "We do have a source of information," he said slowly. "Years ago, a secret deal was made." Alaric frowned. "What deal?" Marcus glanced at the other strategists in the room, then stepped closer to Alaric. A group of humans made contact with this invading force in secret. It was an attempt to prevent their arrival, but the situation has changed. Now we're at war. A chill ran down Alaric's spine. "Who made this deal, Marcus? Why haven't you told me this before?" Marcus spoke without meeting Alaric's eyes. "I was only a part of it. They tried to prevent the war, but things didn't go as planned. Now, we're paying the price for that decision. The betrayal runs deeper than we thought." Alaric stared at Marcus in shock. This revelation meant the enemy wasn't just external. "Who are these people? Who sold us out?" Finally, Marcus met Alaric's eyes. "I'm trying to tell you the truth, Alaric. There are individuals at the highest levels of world governments who have been working with this invading force. Maybe that's why we were caught so unprepared." The gears in Alaric's mind began turning. The scale of the betrayal was shifting the war into an entirely new arena. This wasn't just a battle between humanity and alien invaders. It was also a conflict among humans themselves. But just then, a communications officer burst into the room in a panic. "General Stone, the enemy is on the move again. We've detected a massive buildup along the Atlantic coast." Alaric and Marcus immediately turned to the screens. Satellite imagery showed a massive enemy fleet advancing rapidly in the middle of the Atlantic. This fleet was far larger and far more advanced than the scouting force from before, heading straight for Earth's eastern seaboard. "This time, we'll have to throw everything we've got at them," Alaric said. "Mobilize all forces, air, land, and sea. We must defend the Atlantic coastline." Within moments, all defense systems along the Atlantic were on high alert. Major cities like Boston, New York, and Washington were among the top priorities. Air forces were deployed, and the world's elite military units took up battle positions. Along the coast, laser cannons, missiles, and unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, were primed for the incoming assault. The first moments of the battle began with bright flashes in the sky. As the enemy ships advanced at high speed, they were met with volleys of missiles launched from the ground. The missiles exploded against the shields of the ships, creating massive bursts of light in the sky. But these ships were much more durable than those in the Pacific. Their shields were more resistant to Earth's attacks. Alaric watched the chaos unfold on the battlefield. Ground defenses were beginning to falter, and the enemy forces were advancing rapidly. "We have to hit them from the air. If we lose air superiority, we lose this war," one of the strategists said urgently. "Draw them towards us," Alaric ordered. "Get them into a position where we can strike from above. Ground forces, pull back." UAVs and fighter jets swooped down toward the enemy ships. The sky turned into a hellish war zone as the ships returned fire. Pilots performed evasive maneuvers to avoid the barrage, while UAVs were shot down one after another. But soon, Alaric's plan began to work. As the enemy ships focused on the jets, laser cannons on the ground adjusted their aim and locked onto their targets. "Fire!" Alaric shouted. A barrage of laser fire struck the enemy ship's shields, and this time, the shields began to weaken. The first ship exploded in a ball of flames and crashed into the ocean below. One by one, other ships were also targeted. However, the enemy still vastly outnumbered them and continued to press forward. Just then, a problem arose on the ground. Marcus, standing near the wreckage of a downed UAV, looked up with wide, horrified eyes. They're here, he yelled. The enemy had not only attacked with their ships. Their ground forces had also begun infiltrating Earth's defenses. Enemy soldiers, using underground tunnels and the wreckage of their ships, had already breached the Atlantic coast. The battle was no longer just in the skies, it was now raging on the ground as well. Alaric's vision darkened. This war was far more complex and brutal than he had anticipated. But he had no intention of backing down. "We will win this war," he muttered. The sky was filled with explosions and flashing lights, while on the ground, enemy forces had infiltrated the coast and were advancing toward the city centers. General Alaric Stone watched the chaos from the command center, fully aware that the situation was deteriorating fast. Winning this war was more important than anything else for humanity, but the enemy was vast and ruthless. "They're breaching through the underground tunnels, moving inward," shouted an officer, pointing at the map. Alaric clenched his teeth. Fighting a war on their own soil was always the hardest. "Don't pull back the ground troops. Let's trap them," he ordered. "Dig trenches, build barricades. No retreat. We defend to the end." Marcus gripped his weapon and headed toward the battlefield outside. "I'm joining the front line," he said curtly. Alaric gave a nod. The bloodiest part of the battle was now beginning. Enemy soldiers, with their colossal armored vehicles and advanced weapons, were pushing relentlessly along the coast. The human defense lines were equipped with high-tech weaponry, but the enemy kept sending more waves of troops. The clash of laser weapons mixed with the hiss of bullets, while explosions sent the beach sand flying into the air. Human soldiers held their positions, fighting fiercely as wave after wave of enemies crashed down upon them. Alaric commanded a group of elite soldiers, firing back from behind the barricades. Trenches were being torn apart by enemy fire, and sandbags were flying everywhere. A group of soldiers prepared shoulder-mounted rockets to take down a massive enemy armored vehicle. Alaric barked into the radio, "Fire the rockets, now!" The explosion that followed was immense as the rocket struck the armored vehicle, setting it ablaze and bringing it crashing down. The enemy, composed of heavily armed and trained soldiers with advanced machinery, was determined to seize the beach. Amid the explosions, Alaric crouched next to a soldier, taking cover. "We're going to win this," he muttered to himself. But just then, one of the enemy soldiers from the front lines leaped over the barricade, drawing his sword. This towering warrior, armed with a high-tech shield and a glowing blade, locked eyes with Alaric. His gaze was cold and determined. The enemy warrior charged at Alaric with a fierce roar, meant to intimidate the human soldiers. But Alaric didn't flinch. He quickly activated the laser blade on his wrist, skillfully parrying the attack. Sparks flew as the two weapons clashed. "That all you got?" Alaric muttered, drenched in sweat. The enemy warrior attacked again, swinging his sword toward Alaric's chest. But Alaric dodged to the side and launched a counterattack, plunging his laser blade into the enemy's abdomen. For a brief moment, everything went silent. The enemy warrior let out a low groan before collapsing to the ground. As Alaric caught his breath, a voice crackled over the radio. "General Stone, enemy forces are advancing from the north as well. We're under a two-front assault." Alaric gritted his teeth. The situation was getting more dire by the second. Concentrating all his forces in one place was risky, but getting caught between two fronts would mean certain death. "Send reinforcements to the northern front. We'll hold the line here." Meanwhile, Marcus Ward was in the thick of the battle at the northern front, where the fighting was most intense. Enemy troops had launched a heavy assault from both air and ground. As Marcus fired his laser rifle, taking down an enemy soldier, he shouted to the troops behind him, "Don't retreat. We're all going to die here, but we'll protect Earth." Explosions rocked the ground, and a soldier next to Marcus was struck down. Desperately, Marcus knelt beside him, but it was too late. Behind him, enemy forces were rapidly closing in. "Damn it," Marcus growled. With enemy attacks continuing, Marcus and the remaining soldiers took cover behind a barricade. Laser fire erupted all around them, hitting the barricade like a storm. Marcus grabbed his radio and yelled, "Alaric, we're losing this front. If you don't send more reinforcements, we're done here." Alaric's voice came back firm and resolute. "Hold the line. Reinforcements are on the way." But Marcus wasn't sure the reinforcements would arrive in time. Another explosion rang out in the sky, and the enemy bombardment seemed to be leveling the coast. For a moment, Marcus thought it was all over. But then, something caught his eye in the distance, a glimmer of light. A massive fleet was rapidly approaching through the sky. The last hope for humanity, a fleet of colossal warships, had finally arrived. "They're here," Marcus said in half-disbelief. This might be the moment humanity could rise again. The fleet descended upon the enemy lines, raining destruction from above like a storm of fire. Alaric Stone's eyes were fixed on the horizon as he sensed the battle was nearing its end. Through the explosions and screams, the massive fleet slowly emerged, pushing the enemy back inch by inch. The reinforcements had changed the tide of the war. This fleet was made up of humans who had been sent years ago to colonize another planet. They had returned from the new worlds they built to answer Earth's call for help. Alaric's radio crackled once again, and a familiar voice came through. "General Stone, this is Commander Vance of the Harbinger Colony. We've come to your aid. What's your status?" Alaric took a deep breath. For years, many had believed the Harbinger Colony, long thought lost, was nothing more than a myth. Now, at their most desperate hour, they had arrived. "Attention all units!" Alaric shouted. "The Harbinger Colony is here. We're launching the final assault to drive the enemy back." The ships of the Harbinger Colony swiftly took their positions on the battlefield. They quickly adapted to the brutal pace of the fight. Their technology was far superior to Earth's. Over the years, they had developed advanced weapons on their distant planet, and these weapons swept through the enemy like wildfire. Their enhanced energy shields, laser cannons, and unmanned drones obliterated enemy ships in an instant. Alaric noticed a surge of morale within his ranks as the Harbinger fleet entered the fray. Soldiers, now bolstered by this unexpected reinforcement, attacked the enemy with renewed vigor and determination. The human forces were breaking through the enemy's defense lines, and the enemy troops were beginning to fall into complete disarray. The enemy, stunned by the Harbinger Colony's advanced technology, began to retreat. Explosions erupted across the sky, and Alaric could feel victory drawing near. In the thick of the battle, Commander Vance stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the tide of war turn. Though they had built a new civilization on a distant planet, they had returned to protect their old home. "The enemy forces are retreating, Commander," an officer said, a smile on his face. Vance's eyes scanned the battlefield, finally resting on the front lines where Alaric Stone led the charge. He had never imagined they would cross paths again, but here they were, side by side, fighting for humanity's survival. As the final victory announcement echoed, a peaceful silence settled over the sky. It was clear that humanity had turned a new page, aided by help from across the stars. As Alaric spread his arms wide and took a deep breath, the bittersweet taste of victory settled into his soul once more. The wrath that had descended upon Earth was over, but humanity was no longer alone. With the Harbinger Colony by their side, they would be better prepared for the wars yet to come. ChatGPT Hata Yapabler. Onemli Bilgillery Control Eden.